This doesn't light your firemen, the pilot lights out.
This football team is coming into our place. We're standing in our way.
This is a game of the heart. Focus and finish.
So how did you do in week 4? You still in it? You have it all wrapped up before the Dolphins-Saints game tonight? It's interesting. So many of the questions I get on Monday mornings are from people who aren't doing well. And I guess that's because if you're winning, you're more confident in your lineups each week and don't need as much reassurance. Now for those of you who are still having problems, don't sweat it. It's a war of attrition. So pick your head up. You can still do some damage. It's only week 4. And hey look, if you really messed up in your draft and you have absolutely no hope, try playing in daily fantasy games. It's like having a do-over every week, because they're salary cap-based games and you can pick a spanking new roster each week, giving you a clean slate every time you play. So give that a shot. Now let's take a quick look at what we learned from the week 4 game so far. Reggie Bush fits the Detroit offense like a glove that would make OJ appear guilty. Standard formats, PPR leagues, it's all good. He's just got to stay healthy enough to rack up the fantasy points. And check this one out. With a quarter of the season in the books, the Denver Broncos have some guy named Manning, who's apparently the older brother of the Giants quarterback, that's completing 75% of his passes and a target for 5,880 yards and a 64-0 touchdown to interception ratio. This guy is on his way to becoming a household name, as the Broncos are now on pace for 716 points, which would shatter the old Patriots record of 589 back in 2007. Wait, what's that? We have some breaking news. Apparently Geno Smith has had his mail intercepted today by a Titans fan. And apparently, when he went down to the post office to straighten it out, they gave him his mail, but he dropped it in the puddle walking to his car. Foot injury? What foot injury? Le'Veon Bell played on 60 of Pittsburgh's 79 snaps Sunday, and he had 20 touches for 84 yards and 2 TDs. He caught 4 passes for 27 yards and was targeted 5 times. The fact that he's going to be a dual threat out of the backfield will have owners flocking to get him, particularly in PPR leagues. And how about the resurgence of Phillip Rivers? He threw for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns Sunday, completing 83% of his passes. And turn back the clock, Antonio Gates with 10 catches for 140 yards and a touchdown. Rivers' success is turning out to be like a tide rising all boats, with Danny Woodhead looking like LT coming out of the backfield, catching Rivers' passes and beating linebackers on routes, as he had 5 catches and 2 TDs of his own. Jamal Charles is proving to be as reliable as they come. At this point, he's on pace for 1,156 yards on 280 carries and 92 receptions for 852 yards and 16 touchdowns. If you have him in your lineup every week, you've got a shot every week. And how about Eli Manning with another pick yesterday behind an offensive line masquerading itself as a piece of Swiss cheese? That makes 77 turnovers since 2010, which is the most in the NFL, making Mark Sanchez look like he's actually done a good job protecting the ball by comparison. And 67-year-old Tony Gonzales had a game last night with 12 catches for 149 yards and 2 TDs. Before the game, my inbox was filled with people claiming he was done. Hey, consider the fact that Gonzales had 9 games in 2012 with 5 or fewer fantasy points in standard leagues, and yet still had the 3rd most fantasy points at the position last year. Bench him at your own peril. Today's Twitter question comes from @GregTrezor, who wants to know what I think of Trent Richardson now that he's on the Colts. Menza. Look, I understand people were high on him coming into the season, and even more so after the trade. But to me, he's one of those players that's a better real-life player doing things that matter on the field than he is a fantasy player. I know he scored a touchdown from close in for the 2nd consecutive week for the Colts, but, he finished with 60 yards on 20 carries, which means his yards per carry problem is no different than it was in Cleveland. Let's take a look at tonight's Monday night matchup with the 3-0 Dolphins taking on the 3-0 Saints. Now, Drew Brees is the Monday night king. He's won 8 in a row with a Peyton Manning like 24-5 touchdown to interception ratio, and I think he's poised for another big night against Miami at home. The Dolphins defense ranks 22nd in NFL points allowed per game, and I see Brees and all the impact players on the Saints offense turning those yards allowed into points better than the other teams have done to date. As for Miami, you've got Ryan Tannehill with Mike Wallace and Brian Hartline to look after, but I don't see anything special with them tonight, especially on the road in the Dome. I'm not particularly fond of Lamar Miller, and Charles Clay is a decent player, but there's not much there from a fantasy standpoint. I know both of these teams come in undefeated, but in short, I see Drew having a typical breeze tonight. For those of you who told me I was an idiot for taking the Patriots money line last night, alright, I'm an idiot. But I'd rather be an idiot with money in my pocket than smart like you without it. Look, anytime I see Tom Brady getting 3.5 points in a primetime game, that's when I go the other way. I don't care who they're playing. If you have a question you want answered here on the show, hit me up with a tweet, and if I don't use your question, I'll tweet you back with my best advice. And be sure to tune into the Roto Experts Fantasy Football News Notes and Analysis segment every weekday. I'll be here to keep you current and ahead of the competition, and on weekends, come back for This Week in Fantasy Football as I team up with the King, Scott Engel, covering the week that was, the week that will be, and answering your viewer questions. For Roto Experts, I'm Mike Cardano. Enjoy the game, everyone.